Hello everyone and welcome. Sit back, relax, make a cup of tea or whatever you like to drink and get ready for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. So subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet and let's get started. What was the most ludicrous reason someone at your place of employment was let go? Part 3. My sister lost her job for stealing. About 4 or 5 years ago, my sister and I worked at a Five Below. The manager used to work with my family and they came back to town to open a new store in my old neighborhood. It was a lot of fun. A member of my family got in touch with GM and they told us to apply as team members or cashiers. My sister and I both got jobs there and helped with the grand opening, which was great. People always knew we could pick up shifts, make customers happy, and go the extra mile. One of us even got Employee of the Month. My sister did something awful after 8 months of good deeds. To be clear, there are a few self-checkout stations in the front. There were 3 of them at that time. The customer is able to check out on their own and they don't even have to collect. My sister was asked to come in one night because another worker had to leave, so she agreed to work extra hours and did so. Later that night, an old woman came in. The woman gets some things and then goes to the cashier to pay. She was nice to her and my sister asked her if she needed help. With a smile, she said, "No thank you, sweetheart." She checked out and left without a fuss. Her sister told her to enjoy the day. Then my sister went to restock the drink bar next to the register and saw that the woman had left $2.37 in change. My sister took it and told the assistant manager about it. The assistant manager told her to put it in the main register and the very front, the one we used to check people out for customers, but never did, and give it back to the woman if someone comes in ahead of time and asks for it. That's what my sister did after saying okay. Anyway, an hour later, my sister saw the woman outside the store leaving the next door store. She decided to open the register, take the money, and run out to the parking lot to give it back to her. The woman thanks her, and my sister goes home after working all night. Gets called in by the GM the next day because she stole from the register. The manager shows her the video when they meet. There are rumors going around the store that corporate's watching us work to see how the store is run. They are actually watching my sister that night. The video makes it look like my sister opened the drawer, took the money out of her pocket, and left. The front door does not have any cameras on the outside. One points right at the front door, but it's so dark inside that you can't see anything. She tells her what happened, and when she called the other worker who was there, they told him the truth about what she said. My GM told me he was sure she was telling the truth and that he would call corporate to explain. When he came back at 15, he looked very upset and uncomfortable. In general, this GM was the nicest and happiest person I've ever seen. This was one of the only times I saw him upset. He told my sister that he had talked to corporate but couldn't get them to see that it was all a mistake. He begged them and told them she had seen the theft, but they told him to fire her right away because they had video evidence of it and would have the local lawyers look into it. He begged them to let her go instead. He said he really didn't want to have to do it because she was a valuable worker who had taken on many shifts and helped from the start. He thought of his workers as family, so he didn't want to break her heart by firing her. My sister cried for days after that. He wrote her a great letter of recommendation and told her to try again in a year. I've never seen someone get fired for something so stupid. Luckily, I haven't worked there in years. When you first start working at the Canada Revenue Agency, you are told very clearly that you should never look at your own file. If you do, it'll be flagged right away and the end of your career. This will be brought up again at least once a year around tax time in a memo because several people looked up their own file. Also, connecting your phone to your computer is not a good idea because it can store data or compromise the network. I'm reminded of this every year. Someone I worked with once plugged in her phone. I told her to take it out, but it was too late. She was being let out of the office within an hour. Ditzy woman Jane wasn't a terrible person, but she's definitely an idiot and loved to lie, big and small ones. I have breast cancer. I've dated such and such celebrity. I didn't take your stapler. I'm having major surgery tomorrow, but I'll be back the next day. I did answer your email. Then it must have gotten lost in some way. She was a bad and eager liar, so you stopped paying attention to what she said. But you were never really in danger of believing one of her stories because they're always so unlikely or just plain impossible. She went around the office one morning and asked different people for $20 or $25. For each person, it was a different reason, like needing the money to get to and from work every day or to quickly tip the delivery driver for her lunch. She'd been telling the office for years, I'm sending money to my boyfriend in South Africa, but don't tell my husband. He only married me because he paid me so that he could live in the United States legally. This didn't really fit with her story. As it turns out, everything about the husband is true. However, the boyfriend's location changed a lot, from South America to South Africa to the Dominican Republic to Florida. Some of her newer coworkers felt bad for her and gave her money, but the rest of us didn't want to hear her latest story or knew she shouldn't have asked us. To get a few bucks from petty cash, she asked her boss and then the boss of her boss. She said it was for work because she needed the money for transportation. Just to end the conversation, I think her boss gave Jane a few bucks out of his own pocket and told her to call HR to talk about transportation options and accommodations. That night, the person whose job it is to count the small amounts of cash does it, writes the total, locks the box, puts it in the cabinet, locks the cabinet, and locks the office. When the same worker opens it in the morning to give cash to someone, they see that some money is missing. The whole front desk, even Jane, who worked alone last night to close, looks everywhere. Everyone looks in the pockets of their work jackets to make sure they didn't take the money by accident and put it there by habit. The supervisor is told about the missing money, and he or she joins the search, but it's clear that Jane is the person they think stole it. Jane is called into the office to talk by her boss and her boss's boss. As soon as they start, Jane starts to yell that they better not accuse her of stealing that money. She freaks out when they ask to see her petty cash record, which is a standard record that every front desk worker has to keep to record every transaction and is collected regularly anyway. She screams that she can't believe she works for a company that would accuse her of such horrible things. Lasts for a long time, then storms out of the office and doesn't come back. She was on her last warning, so I guess you could say she quit, even though she knew she was going to get fired because we have security cameras. Share your horrible experiences/story from living in an HOA, condominium, or with jerk neighbors, Part 3. I'm on an HOA. 3 people were unfairly given all the duties, so I joined the board. When I got there, I learned that we were in a nasty lawsuit with one of the homeowners because he chose to paint his house an unapproved color. It was a blue shading towards Papa Smurf, but I didn't really notice it. Since I'm a lawyer, I quickly asked to look over what our lawyer had been sending us. That's what crap lawyer says. Oh, don't worry, we'll get him in magistrate court. In Georgia, mag court has the right to appeal to state court no matter what, win or lose. Our lawyer said it would cost $3,500 to win the case in mag court, but most of that had already been paid, leaving us with no money left in our accounts. I'm not a real estate lawyer like this woman. I'm a trial lawyer. I told him that this person was very determined to win and that all he had to do to move his case from mag court to state court after losing in mag court was to pay a $75 filing fee. Now he had nothing to lose by going to court on his own since he had to paint his house whether he won or lost. At that point in the case, I thought the likely court cost would have been around $10,000. It was the lawyer who admitted that yes, that was likely how much the whole case would cost if it went to state court. When I told my board members the real costs, they talked to the lawyer. Suddenly, following that rule about color changes didn't seem so important. We finally got the guy to agree that painting his shutters a different color would help lessen the Smurf Village effect, and that was the end of the case. I was the one who had to answer all the questions to the villagers with pitchforks at our HOA meeting about why their dues were going up to pay for litigation, since I was the only lawyer on the board, and meanwhile I wanted to be holding a torch myself. I live next to the most racist white lady. We had a pizza delivery person ask to come to our house just to tell us how much he hated delivering to her. She constantly calls the police on anyone for almost anything, talks badly about people of color, and makes loud comments about them, and please don't get into a fight with her. So starts our story. My sister was a high school student who was late for class. The shape of our driveway is different from most, both the L shape and the fact that it's shared with two other homes makes it very hard to pull out. Because of this, we have to pull out into the street backwards sometimes. Nothing wrong with that. Not many people drive down our street, so it's not a problem. On this day, though, my sister pulled out into the street backwards. The crazy woman next door was also pulling away at the same time. The neighbor, on the other hand, was not only pulling out backwards, she was also pulling out backwards into the same lane across the street. They both tried to get into the same lane at the same time, so they hit each other. My neighbor not only yelled at a 15-year-old girl in the middle of the street saying it was her fault, but she also kept saying rude things until my dad got there 20 minutes later. When both insurance companies looked into it, they both agreed with my sister that her neighbor hit her. She didn't want this to happen, though. For the next 6 months, she sat outside her house and took pictures of everyone who came out of my house. Then she said she would sue us because she had proof it was my sister. It went on for a while. I think she finally dropped it. It was likely the worst thing she did. She has also called us racist names, reported our parties to the police, and called my parents several times over the years to say I was skipping school. I graduated 10 years ago, but she still calls. She's a huge jerk. Barb was the name of the board leader, and she was a very obese elderly woman who could only be seen wearing muumuus. Details are in my possession. Around the age of 8, my mother and I were working together to plant a tree in our backyard. As we were walking down the street, Barb was keeping an eye on us. Whatever it is, she's probably just bored or curious about something. Because of this, my mother and I have to spend a good 2 hours toiling away at digging a hole in the clay ground that is large enough. Despite the fact that we were exhausted and drenched in sweat, we planted the seedling in the ground and covered it with dust. Then Barb makes his way down the neighbor's yard in a waddling manner, her moo-moo blowing in the wind. "I'm sorry, you have to dig up the tree and replant it here," she said, pointing to a couple feet back so it would be in line with another tree. For the sake of avoiding a fight, my mother simply said, "Okay," and dug up the tree. "Whoa, are you serious? You couldn't have told us right from the start, could you?" We used to take all 4 of us kids outside to play when we first moved. Then we received a letter informing us that children are not permitted to play in the front yard due to a complaint about the level of noise. We just played in the backyard because we lived in a neighborhood that was primarily compromised of elderly people, but they all gave us candy and never complained about it. A week later, a letter arrives informing the parents that their children are not permitted to play in the backyard. It was totally untrue. I hated her so much. This happened again. She walked right into my house and stood in the kitchen. Dad freaked when he saw her. She never came down again after that. After that, a couple of years later, she's expelled from the board due to the numerous complaints she has received over the years. Even though I was not involved, my father fought the HOA for a decade by himself. In the 1970s, when there was no homeowners association, he purchased the house. After that, one was established, and we had no intention of going along with it. However, he did not want anything to do with their dues or regulations, even though he was willing to pay for the road and the sewer. Over the course of more than a decade, he fought them in court to prevent him from becoming a member of the residential association. Some of the things that they did included turning off the water and sewer to the house and being harassed by their incompetent community security. To enrage them, he covered the front of the house with 2 enormous Puerto Rican flags, purchased some horribly ugly monster figures, and placed them on the front lawn with the names of HOA board members written on them. All of these actions were done simultaneously. In the end, a judge decided that he was exempt from having to join, and he was awarded a settlement. That HOA must have thrown away a significant amount of money by fighting him in court for 3 years. In addition, it was not about the money. The annual fee was only $300. He claimed that he was an independent homeowner and that he enjoyed arguing. I believe that he took pleasure in the entire process of arguing with the HOA and getting them angry. If you want to watch the part 2, click the link here. Thank you for subscribing, the likes, and comments. We're very happy to see you all in the comments too. Thanks for your support.